Father's Day, Sunday noon. The whole family is on the back patio. Sizzling burgers. My daughter Anna walks over with a large, neatly taped cardboard box. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. The box is too light to be a gift and too formal for a joke. In that instant, I knew the clock Lydia and I had set years ago had finally started ticking. They were making their move on the house, my home. The air hung thick and heavy, 92 degrees in the shade of the old oak Lydia planted. The smell of charcoal and sizzling fat was a ghost of 1,000 other summer afternoons. Anna's husband, Mark, clapped me on the shoulder, his hand a little too firm. "Big day, George," he said, gesturing at the box. His gaze flickered towards the second-story windows, the master suite. He was already measuring for new drapes. He thought he was being subtle. He was never subtle. I ran my thumb over the edge of the cardboard. Lydia had always said, when they stop asking and start telling, the plan begins. I heard her voice as clearly as if she were standing beside me. This box was them telling me. But what they didn't know was that every brick in this house, every deed, every meticulously filed tax return, was part of a story they had never bothered to read. They only saw its last page, the inheritance. That was their first mistake. My little granddaughter, Chloe, ran over and hugged my leg. "Grandpa, can we go to the workshop later?" Her innocence was a sharp, clean sting in the middle of this suffocating performance. "Of course, sweetie," I said, ruffling her hair. Anna shot her a look. "Chloe, don't bother Grandpa. He's got important things to think about." The important things being, of course, how quickly he could vacate the premises. My own daughter, policing my time with my grandchild. I reached into my pocket for my old parcel knife. It was a simple tool, worn smooth with use, the blade still sharp. Lydia had given it to me 30 years ago, a silly stocking stuffer that became a part of my daily life. Now, it felt like a surgical instrument. I was about to perform an autopsy on my family's decency. I slid the blade under the tape, the sound a crisp, definitive tear in the humid air. The box was open. Mart leaned in, a predator-smelling weakness. "You know, George, we've been doing some research. The market is incredible right now. We're talking a $1.8 million valuation. Easy." He said the number like a prayer, a sacred invocation. He saw a pile of cash. I saw Lydia's rose garden, the pencil mark on the kitchen doorframe where we measured Anna's height, the spot on the floor where Chloe took her first steps. To him, it was an asset. To me, it was a life. Inside the box, nestled in white tissue paper, were not gifts, but documents. Brochures, actually. Glossy, cheerful pamphlets for 3 different assisted living facilities. Silver Pines, Golden Meadows, Sunset Vista. The names were an insult, a sterile euphemism for the end of the line. They had packaged up my future and presented it to me with a bow, expecting gratitude. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it almost made me laugh. I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was beginning. Anna put her hand on my arm. Her touch felt alien. "Dad, we're worried about you here. All alone in this big house. It's too much work. We found some really wonderful places, 5-star reviews." Her voice was syrupy with false concern, a performance for the other family members scattered around Belong, who were now pretending not to watch. They had picked the most public moment possible, a deliberate, calculated humiliation. But that was only half the truth. It was also their greatest tactical error. My nephew, a decent kid, looked uncomfortable. My sister-in-law busied herself with the potato salad. They were all witnesses to the coup. Mark pulled out a sleek, lever-bound folder. And we had a realtor draw up some preliminary paperwork, just to get the ball rolling. It's all standard stuff. Power of attorney for property matters, you know? He slid it onto the table, next to the box of brochures. The finality of it was like a judge's gavel. They thought they had me cornered. I picked up a brochure for Silver Pines. The cover showed a smiling, silver-haired couple playing chess. They looked happy and vacant. I thumbed through the pages. Scheduled activities, communal dining, 24-hour nursing care. It was a well-appointed prison. "This one has a pool," I said, my voice even. That's nice. Anna's shoulders relaxed slightly. She thought I was compliant, that the old man had finally accepted his obsolescence. She had forgotten who taught her how to play chess. I remembered a conversation with Lydia years ago, after her first diagnosis. We were sitting right here, on this patio. "They'll come for the house, George," she'd said, her voice weak but firm. "Not out of malice, but out of greed. It's a different kind of poison, but it kills things all the same. We have to be ready." We spent the next 6 months with our estate lawyer, Mr. Davies, building a fortress disguised as a simple will. This box was the first cannonball against its walls. Mark cleared his throat, sensing a lull. "The thing is, Dad," he began, using the term with an ease that always grated on me, "we need to act fast. The interest rates are climbing. To get the maximum value, we should list by August 1st. That gives you 6 weeks to pack up." He delivered the deadline with the casual air of a man discussing the weather. 6 weeks to dismantle a life of 50 years. 6 weeks to become a ghost in my own home. I carefully placed the brochure back in a box. I looked from Anna's anxious face to Mark's smug one. They were a team, a perfectly synchronized unit of entitlement. They had rehearsed this. They had talked about Dad's situation over late-night glasses of wine in their sleek, minimalist apartment, the one I'd helped them get the down payment for. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, more potent than the charcoal smoke. I closed the box flaps. "It's a lot to think about," I said, my voice deliberately mild. "You've certainly done your homework." I gave them a small, weary smile. It was the smile they expected. The smile of a man defeated by age and loneliness. I let them have it. Let them believe they had won the first battle. An architect knows that the most important work is done before a single brick is laid. My foundation, laid with Lydia, was unshakable. They were building their dream on a sinkhole. My granddaughter Chloe tugged on my shirt again. "Grandpa, the burgers are burning." I looked over at the grill, where forgotten patties were charring, sending up plumes of acrid smoke. The perfect metaphor. Mark rushed over, swearing under his breath, scraping at the blackened meat. He was so focused on the big prize, the house, that he couldn't even manage the small details. It was a flaw in his character I had noted many times. It was a flaw I intended to exploit. "Anna, stay by my side. We're doing this because we love you, Dad." The lie was so bald, so transparent, it was almost beautiful in its audacity. Love had nothing to do with it. This was about unlocking capital. It was about liquidating her childhood to fund their future. She saw the house not as a home, but as a number in a bank account, a number she felt she was owed. I nodded, playing the part. "I know, honey, I know." I picked up my parcel knife from the table. The worn wooden handle was warm from the sun. I slipped it back into my pocket. A tool for opening things, a tool for cutting things apart. It had opened their first salvo, and in time, it would be there when I cut the final ties. They saw an old man with a pocket knife. They didn't see the architect who designed the city courthouse, who knew every permit, every zoning law, every loophole by heart. Later that evening, after everyone had left, the house was unnervingly quiet. The smell of burnt charcoal still lingered in the air. I sat in my study, the leather-bound folder Mark had given me sitting on the desk. Power of attorney, the audacity. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what it contained. A total abdication of my rights, my autonomy. A neat legal instrument to turn me from a father into a dependent. But that wasn't the only legal instrument in this house. I walked over to the bookshelf, the one I built with my own hands. I ran my fingers along the spines of drafting manuals and history books. My hand stopped on a thick, unassuming volume, a history of Roman aqueducts. I pulled it from the shelf. It was heavier than it should have been. Inside, a hollowed-out section held a single, sealed manila envelope. Lydia's handwriting was on the front. "Plan B," it said. Just that. Plan B. The cruelty of their chosen stage, Father's Day, was the part that echoed most. They didn't just want the house. They wanted to be seen as dutiful children caring for an aging parent while they did it. They wanted public validation for their private greed, a performance of compassion to mask the robbery. It was a masterful piece of emotional theater. But every good architect knows that a structure's most critical weakness is often right next to its grandest facade. My phone buzzed. A text from Anna. Thinking of you, Dad. Hope we didn't overwhelm you. It's all from a place of love. The nauseating little heart emoji at the end was the final twist of the knife. They were managing my feelings now, preemptively smoothing over their own aggression. They needed me to be a passive participant in my own erasure. I typed back a simple reply. Thank you for your concern. We will talk soon. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a small framed photo of Lydia. She was younger, laughing into the camera on a beach somewhere. They're moving faster than we thought, my love. I whispered to the picture. Her smile seemed to understand. We had always been a team. Death hadn't changed that. Her absence was a physical presence in the room, a source of quiet strength. She was the architect of the plan. I was just the builder. I thought about Mark's deadline. August 1st. It felt both impossibly soon and infinitely far away. He thought he was setting the timeline. He thought he held all the cards, all the urgency. What he didn't understand was that his clock was running on his time. My clock, the one Lydia and I had wound and set, operated on an entirely different mechanism. It was governed by legal statutes and notarized seals, not by market fluctuations and impatient greed. I walked back out to the patio. The moon was high, casting long gray shadows across the lawn. The air was finally cooling. I stood on the spot where Anna had handed me the box. I could still feel the phantom weight of it in my hands. The box was meant to be an ending, the final chapter of my independent life. They had no idea it was a beginning. It was the trigger, the formal declaration of war that activated everything Lydia and I had prepared. I went back inside, locking the patio door. The click of the deadbolt was loud in the silent house. A small, definitive sound. The first fortification. I went to my study, picked up the phone, and dialed a number I hadn't called in 3 years. The phone rang twice before a familiar, professional voice answered. Davies here. Mr. Davies, I said, my voice steady. It's George. It's time. They brought me the box. A pause on the other end. Then, I'll be ready. Set. Davies's voice was the same as it had been for 30 years, dry, calm, and precise. They took the bait, George. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 1 was simple, thing compliance. I called Anna the next morning. Let's talk on Wednesday, I said, here at the house. Her relief was audible. Oh, Dad, that's wonderful. We'll bring coffee. They thought the old man was folding. They had no idea I was just shuffling the deck. Wednesday arrived with the scent of Anna's overpriced coffee and Mark's ambition. He spread a new set of papers across the dining room table, a space usually reserved for family meals, now a beachhead for his invasion. This is a preliminary sales agreement, he said. The offer is $1.95 million, but it's contingent on a 30-day escrow. We have to move fast. He was a bad salesman, showing his hunger. Lydia would have laughed. I spent the next few days in a flurry of quiet activity, not packing, but preparing. In my files, I found the records for the $75,000 loan I had paid off for Mark's failed software company back in 2019. He called it a temporary setback. I had called it a lesson. He had apparently learned nothing. I made a neat copy of the settled down notice from the bank and placed it in a new folder. They remembered the substantial down payment I gave them for their condo as a generous, no-strings gift. They forgot about the other times I had quietly covered their debts. They saw me as a resource to be tapped, a well that had finally run dry and whose land could now be sold. But that was only half the truth. The well wasn't dry. I had just capped it. We took the liberty of scheduling a tour at Silver Pines for Friday, Anna announced over the phone, her voice bright with forced cheerfulness. Just to see it. No pressure. The pressure was a physical weight in the air, a low barometer headache. Of course, I agreed. I'm happy to look. Let them think they were in control. Let them march me around the model showroom of my own future. An architect always inspects the site before demolition. The tour was a masterpiece of depressing euphemisms. The memory care wing, the golden years cafeteria. A perky director showed us a room the size of my walk-in closet, with a window overlooking a parking lot. Mark nodded approvingly. Very efficient use of space. He wasn't evaluating my comfort. He was calculating square footage and overhead. He was already liquidating my next and final asset. On the way out, I feigned a dizzy spell. "I think I'll just sit here on this bench for a moment," I said, my voice intentionally frail. "You two go ahead and get the car." They scurried off, relieved to be done with the charade. From the bench, through the lobby's plate glass window, I saw Mark wrap his arm around Anna. He tilted his head back and laughed, a silent, predatory gesture of triumph. The performance for the old man was officially over. That evening, I was in my study, with the window cracked open to catch the cooling air. Their car pulled into the driveway, the engine cutting out with a sigh. They thought I was in the living room, watching television. They stood on the front porch, just below my window, their voices sharp whispers in the twilight. Mark's voice was a low growl of impatience. "I can't believe he's dragging this out. He's going to blow this deal for us." Then came Anna's reply, the words that would echo in my mind for days. "Patience, Mark. He's stalling. He probably wants to feel like he has some control." A pause. "If he doesn't sign by the 1st, I'll call Dr. Evans. She already agreed he's showing signs of decline. We can petition for conservatorship. It will be messy, but we'll win." They weren't just taking my house. They were methodically dismantling my life, my very identity. A doctor. They had already spoken to a doctor, planting seeds of doubt about my competence. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was a betrayal so profound it felt clean, like a surgical incision. There was no more ambiguity, no more benefit of the doubt. This was war. I walked to the bookshelf, my movements stiff. It was time for Plan B. I took my parcel knife and slit open the thick manila envelope. The sound was a whisper of finality. The first document was a notarized affidavit from Lydia, dated 5 months before her death. Her signature, though slightly shaky, was firm. It stated that she was of sound mind and body, and was signing this of her own free will. It was a preemptive strike against any future claim of incompetence or coercion. She had seen this coming, even then. My brilliant, pragmatic Lydia. Beneath it lay the real weapon, the Miller family irrevocable trust, a document as thick as a novel. Upon her death, all our major assets, including the deed to this house, had automatically transferred into the trust's name. I was the sole, unremovable trustee until my own death. Anna was a beneficiary of the trust's remainder, but she had absolutely zero control. They had been trying to sell a house that legally they couldn't even touch. The transfer had been executed by Mr. Davies the week after Lydia's funeral. It was a quiet paper transaction filed at the county office, a detail so mundane they would never have thought to check. We let them believe everything was still in my name, governed by a simple will. We knew that their greed, left unchecked, would eventually lead them to overplay their hand. That Father's Day box was the overplay we had been waiting for. The following Monday, the pressure escalated. Mark appeared at my door with a man in a tweed suit, a property appraiser. "Just getting a final valuation, George. For the bank." I let them in. I was polite, offering them coffee. I watched the appraiser measure rooms that held 50 years of my life, reducing them to line items on a spreadsheet. All the while, the trust document sat in my desk drawer, a silent, ticking bomb. They called for a final meeting, an intervention. My sister was there, her face etched with worry. My nephew, looking uncomfortable. They sat me in my favorite armchair, the one Lydia always read in. Mark stood before the fireplace, like a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. He spoke of my recent memory lapses, my isolation. He framed their avarice as deep, loving concern. A masterpiece of gaslighting. Anna wept. They were tears of pure frustration this time. "Dad, please," she sobbed, "don't make us do this the hard way. The doctor is on our side. The court will see it our way." The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The public humiliation of a competency hearing, of having my own daughter testify that I had lost my mind. This was their checkmate. They thought they had me. For a moment, watching the faces of my family, all aligned against me, I felt a profound sense of despair. They had built such a convincing cage of lies that even I began to feel its bars. This was the moment Lydia had warned me about. "They will use your love as a weapon," she had said, "and your decency as a weakness." I looked past them to her photograph on the mantel. Her smile was my anchor. I let the silence stretch out, letting their anxiety build. Finally, I looked up, making my expression one of weary resignation. "You are right," I said, my voice quiet. "It is too much for me. You win." I saw Mark's shoulders relax, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. Anna's sobs subsided into sniffles. "Let's meet on Friday. 10 a.m. at the County Registry of Deeds. We will sign everything. It's time to be done with it." They practically floated out of the house on a cloud of relief and victory. The difficult business was over. The old man had capitulated. They had been reasonable, and he had finally seen the light. They were good children. They were helping their father. The self-congratulatory delusion was sickening, but youthful. An enemy who believes they have already won is a predictable enemy. The Registry of Deeds. Their choice, not mine. The irony was exquisite. A public forum filled with clerks and lawyers and public records. A place where titles and deeds are everything, and emotional appeals are nothing. They thought they were choosing the place of their victory. They were, in fact, walking onto a stage I had designed for a play whose ending I had already written. The next morning, my first call was to Mr. Davies. "It's Friday, 10 a.m., Registry of Deeds. Bring the originals." My second call was to a locksmith. "I need all the locks on my property changed. Friday at 11:30 a.m. sharp." My third call was to a towing company, to have 2 cars removed from my driveway if they were there after noon on Friday. I gave them Anna's and Mark's license plate numbers. I spent that last day, Thursday, in quiet ritual. I visited Lydia's grave, the stone cool under my hand. I told her what was about to happen. I came home and worked in my woodshop for hours, the scent of fresh-cut oak clearing my head. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was simply an architect, reviewing his final blueprints before the build. Every joint was sound. Every angle was true. By the time the sun set, a deep calm had settled over me. They saw an old man giving up, a father ceding his home and his authority. They saw a signature on a dotted line. What they couldn't see was the intricate legal machinery that single signature would set in motion. They thought they were closing a deal, but that was only half the truth. They were triggering a trust. That night, I laid out the gray suit I'd worn to our 50th anniversary dinner. It still fit perfectly. I polished my best leather shoes. I reread the trust's key clause, the one Davies and I had spent a week perfecting. Activation of discretionary powers of the trustee. It was all there. The legal language was a fortress, and they were about to charge headlong into its walls, armed with nothing but their own greed. Morning came, bright and clear, the flannel day. I drank my coffee slowly, watching the sun climb over the old oak tree in the backyard. The house was quiet, peaceful. It felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. I picked up my briefcase, the original trust documents safely inside, along with several other pieces of paper they had never seen. It was time to go to work. The County Registry of Deeds was a cold, cavernous room with marble floors that echoed every footstep. The air smelled of old paper and bureaucratic indifference. Anna and Mark were already there, chatting with a sharp-suited realtor and a notary. They looked triumphant, beaming. They greeted me with wide, false smiles. "Dad, you're here. We're all ready to go." They pointed to a table with a stack of documents. Their documents. Mr. Davies arrived a moment later, his presence a stark contrast to their smug excitement. He was the picture of sober professionalism. He carried a single, worn, leather briefcase. Mark shot him a condescending look. "George, you didn't need to bring your lawyer. This is all very straightforward." "Oh, I insist," I said, my voice pleasant. "It's always good to have a second set of eyes on things, isn't it?" We sat at the table. The notary, a woman with tired eyes, pushed the power of attorney and the sales agreement toward me. "If you'll just sign here, Mr. Miller." Mark had his pen ready to co-sign, the victorious conqueror. Anna was practically vibrating with excitement beside him. This was it, the moment they had been planning for months, the culmination of their campaign of manufactured concern. I ignored the papers in front of me. Instead, I opened my own briefcase. I slid a single, crisp document across the table. It was the title record for the house. "Before we begin," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the large room, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the ownership of the property located at 214 Elm Street." Mark laughed, a short, sharp bark. "What are you talking about, George? It's your house." He tapped the sales agreement. "We've done the title search." "You did a title search on George Miller," Davies corrected him, his voice cutting through the air. "You failed to search for the legal owner. The Miller Family Irrevocable Trust." He placed our original, notarized trust document on the table with a soft, definitive thud. The realtor was the first to understand. He snatched the title record and his face went pale. He looked at the trust document, then back at his own paperwork. "This can't be right," he stammered. "The property was transferred into the trust 3 years ago. I am the sole trustee. My signature is the only one that can authorize a sale, and I do not authorize it." I stated the facts calmly, letting them sink in. Anna's face crumpled in confusion. "Dad, what is this? What are you doing?" Her voice was a child's wail. The performance was over. Raw, ugly bewilderment was taking its place. "I am doing what your mother and I planned for," I said, my voice like ice. "We planned for this day. For your greed. For your betrayal. We hoped it would never come. But we were architects. We always built for the worst-case scenario." Mark snatched the document, his knuckles white. He scanned the legal jargon, his face darkening with rage as he understood the implications. Unremovable trustee, sole discretion, beneficiary with no control until my death. The fortress was impregnable. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with pure hatred. "You can't do this." "It is already done," Davy said quietly. "It has been done for years. You've been trying to sell a house you have no legal claim to." The notary slowly pulled her stamp back. The realtor was already packing his briefcase, mumbling about misrepresentation. The public audience for their triumph was now witness to their humiliation. My sister-in-law, who had come for moral support, looked from the papers to my face, dawning comprehension on hers. The foundation of their entire plan had just turned to dust. But I wasn't finished. Davies slid another folder across the table. "Furthermore," he said, "the trust has a spendthrift provision and a no-contest clause. By taking these overt actions to seize control of the trust's primary asset against the trustee's will, you have formally triggered the no-contest clause." Anna stared blankly. "What does that mean?" Mark looked like he was going to be sick. "It means," I said, looking directly at my daughter, "that you are now formally and irrevocably disinherited. Upon my death, your portion of the remainder of the trust will now be redirected to the charity specified in the bylaws, the Children's Hospital." I let the name hang in the air, a testament to everything they were not. Their greed had not just cost them a future inheritance. It had cost them everything. Anna made a choking sound, a gasp of pure agony. This was a blow she hadn't anticipated. The money was one thing, but the finality, the public declaration of her disinheritance in this cold, official room was another. She had tried to take my home and my dignity. In return, I had taken her future, using the very legal system she and her husband had sought to weaponize against me. Then I pulled out the final papers, the copies of the checks for Mark's failed business. the loan documents for their condo. And finally, per my rights as trustee to protect the trust's assets from future liabilities, I am calling in all outstanding personal loans, effective immediately. That's a total of $112,500, due in 30 days. After that, I will begin collections and lien proceedings. Mark lunged across the table, his face purple with rage. "You old bastard," he roared. Davies was on his feet in an instant, and a nearby registry guard stepped forward. Mark stopped short, breathing heavily. He was a cornered animal, stripped of his power, his arrogance collapsing into pure impotent fury. He had nowhere to go, no legal ground to stand on. He had lost. I stood up, my chair scraping against the marble floor. I looked at my daughter, her face a mask of tears and disbelief. She wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a stranger who had tried to steal my life's work. "The locks on the house will be changed by noon," I said, my voice void of all emotion. "Anything you have left there will be packed in boxes and left on the curb. Do not try to contact me again." I turned to Mr. Davies. "I believe our work here is done." He nodded, gathering our documents. We left them there, frozen in the tableau of their own making. The defeated plotters, the disgraced heirs, surrounded by the useless paperwork of their failed coup. The echoes of our footsteps were the only sound as we walked away. Outside, the sun was blindingly bright. It felt like walking out of a tomb. The heavy, oppressive weight that had been sitting on my chest for weeks was gone. It wasn't triumph I felt, or even satisfaction. It was just quiet. The quiet of a project completed. The quiet of a storm that is finally past. Lydia would have been proud. We had built a good, strong house. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I answered. It was Chloe, my granddaughter. Her small voice, tiny over the line. She must have borrowed her aunt's phone. "Grandpa, can I still come over to the workshop on Saturday?" The innocence of the question, the purity of it, was a gut punch. "Of course you can, sweetie," I said, my voice thick. "Of course you can. The workshop is always open for you." I drove home, the familiar streets of my neighborhood a welcome sight. I saw the locksmith's van already in the driveway, a symbol of the new perimeter. My home was secure. It was mine. The memory of Mark's face, contorted with rage, and Anna's, broken with despair, was already beginning to fade, like a bad dream at dawn. They were no longer a part of my calculations. I walked through my front door, the smell of lemon polish and old books welcoming me. My house, my sanctuary. I went to my study and sat at my desk, the room filled with afternoon light. I picked up the old parcel knife, the simple tool that had started it all. I ran my thumb over the smooth, worn wood. Then I put it down and pulled a fresh sheet of drafting paper toward me. I had a new birdhouse to design for Chloe.